here. It's our first GO/SES panel. We know that representation is important. It's important for us to see ourselves in leadership positions, and so we have decided to sort of spotlight key leaders, people who have influenced us over the next few months, doing them one at a time, so we can really dive deep and learn from them and get their mentorship. So General Edwards has graciously offered to be our first GO, and we chose Sanam Q, he goes by Q, to be our first facilitator. Q has also been active in our group. He's part of the FAO panel, and he also had the privilege of execing for General Edwards, so we're really excited to link them up. But that's pretty much the intro. So if anyone has questions throughout the course of this, you can either put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring that throughout the session, or at the end when we have sort of an open time for Q&A, you can ask then as well. If you'd like to have your video open, you are more than welcome to do so, but please mute your audio if you can, and if not, we'll be monitoring that and muting throughout in case people are like signing on and signing off. Other than that, I think the only other update I have is actually for the PACT. So if anyone is on the Pacific Islander Asian American community team, we're meeting tomorrow sort of as the executive group to really plan our future. So we anticipate that we should be having our big strategic offsite within a month or so. We did find someone to help facilitate, and so we're sort of getting everything squared away with him. So expect an update on that in the next few days. Sorry to have you guys. Looks like General Edwards is on, so good to know. But yeah, so expect an update on the PACT in the next few days. I appreciate everybody's patience and enthusiasm with that. We definitely want to still continue the momentum. So Q, did I forget anything?
No, I think you didn't. You covered everything for me. So
awesome. I'll pass it along to you then, sir.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so welcome everyone. And as Hannah mentioned, we're to kick off with General Edwards being our first speaker. For those that don't know, so we have dropped his bio in the link, and I won't go into much detail. You're welcome to pull that up and read it. But General Edwards is currently serving at DITRA. He graduated from University of Hawaii in an Air Force ROTC program back in 1995. He's had several command positions, including the wing at Ellsworth, the 28th Bomber Wing at Ellsworth, as well as the 479 Flying Training Group at Pensacola, which is where I was fortunate to be his exec. And he also commanded the 96th Bomber Squadron. He's a senior, master combat instructor. And he's also graduated from ACSD, Weapons School, SAS, National Defense Visiting Fellow. I can go on and on, but I will save the time and hand it over to General Edwards for some opening remarks.
Perfect. Thanks, Q and Hannah. Appreciate you all having me here, and good evening to everybody from Washington, D.C. Apologies for being a little late here. Just got home from Fort Belvoir, and even though we're still in COVID, there's still some traffic out there. I just want to start off by saying, again, thanks for having me up here as the first one. Everybody online, represents the 1% of America that has stood up to serve their country, and that's not an insignificant thing. And you did that knowing that you would give your life for others, no matter what their skin color is. And as Asian American Pacific Islanders, you also represent a smaller group of that 1%. All right, so it's a very distinct honor that we all share together. But we're not alone, and this isn't the first time, and we've got a rich history of Asian American and Pacific Islanders who have come before us, such as Medal of Honor winner Dan Inouye, the senator from Hawaii, or even First Lieutenant Wah Kau Kong. If you don't know who Wah Kau Kong is, you could Wikipedia him, but he was a fighter pilot in World War II. And if you don't know it, but you're hearing and seeing the person that received the Wah Kau Kong Memorial Scholarship back in 1994 at the University of Hawaii. So just a lot of folks that have come before us. Some are well known and some aren't, but today our Air Force is very diverse. As I've talked to Hannah and Shar and the team looking around the Air Force, there are a lot of general officers, SESs out there that have continued to have done well and they've continued to climb the ranks, and we expect that trend to continue. You know, at the same time, you know, I think what's important is that we've got to remember that our Air Force is a meritocracy. And at the end of the day, regardless of our ethnic backgrounds, we're all united by our oath to the Constitution and what we stand for. And our Air Force is also different from what's going on in society. Talking to a lot of friends, and in fact, last night I was on a video chat with the former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice. And was very poignant, and it was that when you fast forward to when she took the oath to become the Secretary of State, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the person that gave her that oath, and she has seen how America has come a long way. And she talked about even the idea of America was an impossibility back in 1770, before the Revolutionary War. But she said that America has a rich history in making the impossible at some point inevitable. And I think that we've seen that with a lot of our Asian American and Pacific Islander folks too. Just some background on me. You know, I was born in Saigon, Vietnam. My mom is Vietnamese and Chinese. We left before the fall of Saigon. My dad was in the 5th Special Forces Group and got out and stayed there in Vietnam working at the U.S. Embassy. He was one of those guys that got airlifted back in April of '75 from the rooftop of the embassy with just a suitcase. We were the very fortunate ones though, and we left earlier that January of that year. So we left before the fall, but grew up in Hawaii primarily and spent a few years on Guam. So I think I kind of know what it's like to live on an island, and I know what it's like to live in places where there is not a majority, right? And I often talk to my Caucasian friends that are about to get assigned to Hawaii, and they'll bring up, you know, the fact that, hey, you know, Hawaii seems to be a racist place. And I'll remind them that it's probably going to be a different place for you because it's going to be the first time that you are not in the majority. And that brings with it some different feelings. But I graduated with a computer science degree, software engineering specialty. All of my buddies went to Silicon Valley and have done amazingly well. You know, a few of them have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff. And I've got a 2010 Nissan Frontier. Even Q has a better car than me. So, but it's not about the car. As I talk to those folks, every time I talk to them, they're really interested in what I'm doing and what I've done. And I joined the Air Force just to serve my country. My plan was to do about 6 years and then bail out and go somewhere to the West Coast and do some computer stuff. But during those first 6 years, having gone to combat twice, you know, I found purpose, and I found an amazing group of fellow airmen, many of whom have become best friends, and that's why I continue to serve today, and it's been 25 years. So I've got 3 kids. My wife is part Hawaiian and just a whole bunch of backgrounds. So, you know, it's a crazy place. And Thanksgiving, you've got kimchi, white rice on the table. Yesterday, we had Pakistani food for lunch. You know, it's just a multicultural household. The kids and my wife, Jen, dance hula. I don't, because I cannot dance according to them, but we definitely do a lot of water sports up here and spend a lot of time hiking. So I think Q touched on the highlights of my career. What I will say is my last job, I spent a year as the Air Force Director for the Executive Action Group. And I can tell you that the Secretary of the Air Force, the Chief of Staff, then General Goldfein, as well as the Chief of the Space Force, General Raymond, are very serious about diversity and inclusion. And that was certainly a very important factor for Secretary Barrett, even before we saw what happened at the first part of this summer. You know, that's very important for her. That's very important for the front office. and they have very much valued diversity and inclusion. And I learned a lot from working for the Secretary of the Air Force that year. So with that, what I want to do is, just open it up. Let me know what some of your questions are, concerns, or comments. Hannah, I would like you to take some notes to bring back to the team, and we'll rally up at some point in the near future. I'll pause there.
I can start with some questions if that's all right with you, sir.
Yeah, Q.
So this is I asked, and he said it was okay if I identify him, but Captain John Lee, who I believe is online. He wanted to know, sir, did you have any AAPI mentors and role models as a young CGO or when you were coming in through the ranks?
Yeah, John, it was very few. I could think of a couple. When I walked into my squadron in 1997, I was probably, I'm thinking about it, I was the only Asian there. And probably across the wing, I could count maybe 4 or 5 more across the second bomb wing there at Barksdale. So it was very few. And then if you looked up at the leadership ranks, it was non-existent, right? And I think that's why the team, you and Shar out in PACAP and have kind of raised that issue that, when we look at the leadership books and they're all, right there stacked up there, I flip through it to see which leadership books have been written by Asian Americans, and you just don't see a lot. And so the team has begun a project just to let everybody know, and it's going to be modeled after Chicken Soup for the Soul, and we've already got about 25 general officers, SESs, and other folks around the Air Force and the Space Force that have written story for that project. And we're looking to get that published by the end of the year. And it really goes back to John Lee's point. There is that, not a lot has been written. And if we did want to read about a leadership book, it would not be somebody that looks like us, because those folks were very few and far between. But looking at the air staff and the front office of the Air Force and around the Pentagon, I think that is starting to change and will continue to change. Great question, John.
He actually had a follow-up. John was an all-star with his questions, but one of the follow-ups to that question is we often see that, and he had better numbers than I did, but about 5% of the service in the or officers in the Air Force are comprised of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. But yet, as we move to the senior ranks, that number drops to about less than 2% being represented, certainly at the GO and SES level. So how do we make those changes or ensure that we get better representation from people within our community?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll say this, and this might resonate with many of us, is that, my mom did not want me to join the military, right? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I kind of hit software engineer, and then I joined the military. So back when I was growing up, I think that was the preferred path from an Asian perspective and family. What I've seen, especially as we go into the second and third generation of Asian Americans in the United States, and actually many of you are, many of the folks I'm referring to are on this session right now, is that we've seen folks that have started to move away from that. I don't know if it's a stereotype or if it's just the way that a lot of immigrant families that came over from Asia were geared towards. Some of it, I believe it's because a lot of us came from war-torn countries at some point, whether Korea or Japan in World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, and that's something that a lot of folks wanted to leave behind because they did experience a lot of loss. But yeah, that's just something real. And the way that you solve that, or one way, because I definitely won't have the answers and I have to rely on the team, is that you just have to get out there and talk to folks. And I'd be curious, and I'll throw this back at the group, you know, why did some of you join the Air Force? Feel free to type in or chime in, however Hugh wants to run it.
Yeah, if any of you guys want to chime in, just go off mute and feel free to discuss, please.
Get out of my mom's house.
I'll pop in.
Yeah.
Major Carlton, I go by Snickers. Good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, hey, Snickers.
I met you about a year and a half ago at SMAC when you were about to do our tour. Chuck Wow says hi, by the way. But yeah, and I think I've talked to a couple folks, and I had a very similar story. So my parents, both immigrants, large immigrant family, and we would not have had any opportunity in Taiwan to create the businesses that we have in the United States, and we wouldn't have been able to grow and be able to provide for a lot of families as we've done in this country. When I was applying to the academy, my family was pretty upset. You know, they really wanted me to go into either medicine or law or take over the family business kind of thing. But after they kind of saw what the academy was all about and how it is very different from the Taiwan Air Force Academy, they realized, hey, you know, like, you're really giving back to this country that's given so much to us. Part of it was a little bit of that, you know, that teenage rebelliousness, like, hey, I'm not going to go into, you know, the family business. I don't want your laugh kind of thing, you know, like, but in that time, I've really found an outlet here. But as you mentioned, sir, I'm going to kind of dovetail into an actual question here. As you mentioned, you know, for folks of a certain generation, you know, there was nobody ahead of you. And now I was just kind of looking at the consolidated squadron commander list, and there's a lot of Asian names kind of, you know, on it this year, which is great. It's fantastic. But when I was at Barksdale, I noticed there were a ton of young lieutenants that would just kind of see me walking around, and they do the up down. You know, they didn't say anything. They saw an FGO, you know, hanging out who looked like them. So I don't know if you encountered any of that stuff when you were a squadron commander. Certainly, I'm sure when you're at Pensacola and at Ellsworth and beyond. But what kind of unique challenges did you experience in the squadron level and above in that leadership role when you had all eyes on you?
Oh no, that's great, Snickers. It's great to see you again. And I was just talking to the TWAC guys today about SMAC and DITRO. You know, we own the significant capability there, so that's good. You're doing great work out there. Yeah. First off, thanks for sharing your story. You know, I think that had I been able to get into the Air Force Academy, my parents, you know, with my Chinese heritage means that we're frugal, right? So they would see the free education and be like, "You're going," and looks like I got some laughs out there, but you know, I mean, there's some truth with that, and that's a good thing. I didn't, you know, it's weird. I didn't see as many of the challenges, and I'm not sure if I was blind to them. I was having this discussion with Ed Oshiba. You know, I was saying, you know, Ed, it's odd, but all of these officers out here are great sensors, and they definitely have a different perspective. You know, and I told Ed, I said, man, I don't know what it was like, but if I heard snide remarks or if I heard stuff like that, you know, I think our practice was to put our nose to the grindstone and just work hard and bust butt. and be number one, you know. So I say that not to say that that's the right way, but I think that our experience and your experience is different. And I'll also say that there's kind of a proper role of mentorship, and I think that you hit the nail on the head too. It's kind of, as you're a captain and a major, it's really important that you see those squadron commanders that look like you, you know. And then when you get up to that higher level, it's important that you see those general officers when you're a colonel and a lieutenant colonel that look like you. So I think that's key. All right, I'm looking at.
I don't know if you see that in the chat, sir, but
Yeah.
do you want to add to that? Do you want to speak more to that?
Yeah, you know, that's a great story right there. You know, there's a story about you know, a parent going to a North Vietnamese concentration camp for 6 years, and then, you know, growing up in that environment afterwards, and having a parent that has done that and coming to America and seeing all of the amazing things America has to offer, and joining the military to give back is definitely a immigrant story. And I hear a lot about that. And, you know, yeah.
I'll echo that, sir, if I can. And I mean, so many people that I've met from our community always have, you know, similar stories from their past experiences.
Yeah.
You know my story, but I as well, you know, I joined, we just had the anniversary for 9/11. So I joined ROTC, and that was my senior year when that happened. So the following year I joined ROTC. And one of the reasons was I felt that our military was, or the Muslim community was very underrepresented in the military, and I felt like it needed a voice to kind of break the stereotype and the xenophobia that was, you know, that our country was experiencing after 9/11. And I think that's one of the reasons why I've continued to stay in, is to try to be that voice and try to offer that level of experience to those that may not be familiar with other Muslims in their life.
No, yeah, Q, I definitely know your story, and I'm telling you, you know, it's a phenomenal story, just what each one of us brings, and why we choose to serve. You know, going back to our original question, it was, I think it was, how do we inspire other folks to come up behind us? Because I think John pointed out that there's a very small percentage of folks, and it's just through outreach. It's what you do. Every one of you is actually a recruiter. You know, I had a discussion with Major General Ed Thomas a few days ago. He's the head of Air Force recruiting, and he knows my story, and he's got a detachment out there that's doing some very specific things, and they've plugged us in, and I know that they're plugged in with Hannah and the team out there. So you know, that's the key way. When I was at the 479th Flying Training Group at Pensacola there, I very much encouraged and allowed our personnel to go out there and participate in recruiting-like activities. And I know that we had a captain that developed a program called the Legacy of Flight, and its goals was to really expose minorities out there to flying, and flying with the military. And I didn't hesitate to ever approve a cross-country trip if they were going to Tuskegee, and they were going to get some training going up there and back, and sitting there and talking to the cadets out there, or even kids, because that's the key. And if we can continue that outreach, whether formally through, you know, a formal program that the Air Force has, or informally with what you're doing, you know, that's going to be the key to actually reaching out there. And it's with family members too. I've got a cousin that enlisted. He's a staff in Europe right now, and you know, the big reason why he enlisted was because of the stories, I shared with him. He's about 18 years younger than me, so it's pretty easy to put him in a headlock and correct him. And being an E5 means that me as an 07 can always call up and correct him to this day. But, it was just sharing our stories. And it's every contact that you have, never underestimate it, because you will inspire somebody out there. And it's amazing how I've heard folks that have joined and said, hey, I was, somebody just talked to me one day about the military and I signed up, or whatever their situation was. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of the ideas that you have so that we could share it.
Hello, sir. Nick Torres here. I'm currently serving as a liaison to the Marine Corps out at Camp Pendleton. So it's a great deal being the senior ranking Air Force on the base. It's awesome. I'd like to set this question up by acknowledging something new in the last 5 years. It seems like there is a instant reach from the most senior leaders of our military and government down to the airman level.
Yeah.
And that presents a great tool, but also great problems, because what we're seeing is senior leaders say something, and on the other end, from the lowest ranked guys, they want action, and they're wondering what's going on, and they think that the middle management doesn't want to do anything with it, or that we're scared to do something about it. When in reality, some people probably are, but others are just kind of waiting to see what am I going to get directly from the closest general to me. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on that in regards to one of the more recent kerfluffles that we've had to deal with, which is the role and place of critical race theory in educating our military.
Yeah, that's
you see senior leaders going somewhere with this, because it seems like the airman level, it's kind of like a pause. There's everyone's waiting to hear what direction are we going in.
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think it's a two-part question, and let me touch on the communication piece, because this is important for all of you on here as future commanders and future officers. Is as you go higher, there are more layers between you and your airmen, so you have to continue to have that connection and to hear from them. I know that the previous chief of staff, and I'm sure that General Brown is going to do the same thing, and they've got mechanisms to reach out, because we need to hear the unfiltered voice from down below. It's key, and there are formal ways of bringing information up, and then there are informal ways, and you all represent one of those informal ways, and it's very important, because it helps to kind of reconcile if we're hearing the right thing officially, or if we're not, or if there's a blockage between what we're getting officially based on what I'm hearing from you. And commanders will use that as a tool to complement how they communicate. And I saw that countless times. That's why the leadership goes out there and visits the airmen. That's why when you say something to them, it comes back and they work on it. And I'm trying to think of a few examples out there of this. I think in the context of what we're talking about, the previous chief of staff went out to a base, and we had an Asian American officer that raised some issues, and those issues were brought back to the staff, and it was included as something that we needed to work on. At the same time, you touched on something that General Goldfein called the frozen middle, right? So you've got the top that wants to engage and wants to move, and you've got a lot of our airmen, NCOs, and company grade officers down here. Then there's this layer down right about there that's called the frozen middle, and we constantly fight to get through that layer, both attacking it from up as well as from the bottom too. So it's a challenge. You know, I say just make sure that you put that in your toolkit, because as a wing commander, I spend a lot of time outside my office trying to get unfiltered feedback and trying to ensure that I was listening to all of the airmen out there. And I know that I'm expecting General Brown and Raymond to do the same, and as well as Secretary Barrett. She does take a lot of trips, and she will come back with things that the staff has to work on. I am a witness to that, and I've gotten tasked with a lot of those things too, and it's important. The second part of your question goes back to, you know, what is currently being decided right now on what we are going to teach. And I think that OPM has released some recent guidelines on what's the most effective topics out there, and where do we want to go with them. I think that is still being worked, I know, at the Air Force A1 level. So it's a work in progress right now. But I think that regardless of what we end up implementing in policy, the most important part is to have the open lines of communication and have forums like this. And we're also seeing this at DITRA too, where we've had a lot of race relation discussions. And oftentimes, you know, by listening and understanding, and really listening to understand how some other groups feel, we are better able to move forward as a team and make improvements to our workspace, to our teams, and to our squadrons. And then I'll just close by saying it's got to be tough to be the SSA out there, because I'm the SSA at DITRA too. So I feel you're a pain out there. Keep them blue, okay? Make sure that nobody goes native out there and joins the Corps.
I just got to let them know there's no such thing as free airlift, sir. But it's I can't complain about the weather.
That's true, and stay safe from the fires. I hope that the fires don't go south.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else want to chime in with either their story or a question that they may have from this discussion?
All right, who has seen the show Fresh Off the Boat? Accurate show?
I think I've lived that show. It's my obsession with rap music, yes.
Yeah, so I actually have a direct tie to Fresh Off the Boat. The writer and producer is Ninotchka Khan, and we went to high school together. And Ninotchka was the only Iranian in this high school in Hawaii. So, you know, just, you want to talk to her about her experience and whatnot. It's very different, you know, being the single person out there. So interesting show. I think that show helped to bring a lot of topics and just bring more Asian Americans out there and just have this discussion and remind folks just how diverse American society is.
Hey, sir, Snickers again, sorry.
Yeah.
I have a question of more of a practical nature.
Sure.
Kind of ties into a lot of the research that we found. You know, the minority executives tend to be more open, asking questions with senior mentors that kind of look like them. So as a graduated wing commander, what kinds of things like were you looking for in your squadron commanders, specifically your comptroller? Because I've found my name on that list, and you know, I'm excited, but I'm mildly terrified of going into this as a career aviator that is on the financial management leadership program and about to take over a comptroller squadron next year.
Well, first off, congratulations, and I'm glad it's you and not me, because I married a CPA, and when she saw how I reconciled my checkbook, she freaked out. And I essentially just said, hey, here's the balance that's written in the checkbook. Here's what the bank says, apply a corrective factor of the difference, and I'm done in 1 minute. I'm going to go back and watch football. So the Air Force would not benefit from having me as a comptroller out there, but that's huge. And that just shows that they're gonna, you know, broaden your skills and give you a little bit of diversity. And that's such an important mission. I mean, there is not a day that does not go by that I'm not talking about money. And I had a great comptroller at Ellsworth. She was Korean from Florida. You know, her husband was Korean, just a phenomenal officer, and really kept us in such a good place that in my 2 years at Ellsworth, the wing won the MAGCOM Commander-in-Chief Installation Excellence Award. And my last year there, the 20th Bomb Wing was the #1 bomb wing in the Air Force. And a lot of that is not because it's tip of the spear stuff with what the B1s were doing. It was very much all the supporting functions, from my comptroller to the medical team to my MSG team, because it takes a huge team to make things happen. But I'll tell you what, you know, I'm looking for folks out there that want to continue to serve first and foremost. And I'm looking for good character. And I'm looking for folks that are going to lead and care for people and be leaders. And a leader goes out there and always takes into account people and takes into account risk. If you listen to what General Brown said yesterday during his AFA speech, he said the difference is that a leader deals with risk. Else I'd have a manager out there. And it's an art, and it's not a science. You know, and I'm looking for folks that are proactive, innovative, and can go out there and think, and that want to move the basketball down the court and not stay mid-court where it's nice and safe and dribble it until the game clock ends on their time.
All right. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
Is that helpful?
Very. Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thanks, sir.
Hi, sir. It's Lilo Armandi. I worked with you
Hey.
very briefly when you were at Pensacola, and then I ran off
Lilo.
to another PCS.
I know.
Good to see you again, sir.
Yeah. How's French?
My French is good.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Awesome.
It's
Good.
terrible now. But yeah, I'm currently on maternity leave. So my husband's like, you better, thank you. He's like, you better not be working. I'm like, I'm not working, I swear. Oh, 1 second. Sorry.
Don't worry.
I believe
Okay.
training
Hold
up
on.
15
I'm having a toddler moment. Hold on. I will come back with my question.
No problem, Lilo.
I guess I'll
Take your
have
time.
a question in the middle, sir. We've heard a lot, especially in the last few months, about the importance of diversity and
Yeah.
all, the senior leadership at the Pentagon, from the SecDef to the various service groups. I'm wondering if you can, based on your discussions and based on your experiences, where you see the services in the next, 10, 15 years, and how do we get there? How do we really, retain and recruit people of color and various minorities into the ranks, officer ranks especially?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think it's happening naturally and informally, Q. And I'll go back to when I graduated from flying training in '96. I was the only Asian in my class. And if you remember, when I got to Pensacola in 2015, the first graduating class I had, I've still got that picture today, wish I could share it somehow, was just a cornucopia of people, all genders, all ethnicities, South Asia, Pacific Islander, African American, and it was a very diverse group. And I don't know exactly everything that happened in that 20 years, but I know that a lot has changed, and there has been a lot of progress made, and to continue to make that progress, we just need to get the ideas from folks like you and the entire group here. What are you doing?
What am I currently doing for my son?
What are you doing to recruit more Pakistanis and South Asians?
Oh, so that's a tough barrier to break, especially in the Pakistani community.
Yeah.
But it's you know, and so I guess I do it based on my experience, based on you know what I'm you know, I'm fortunate enough to be a FAO now, which I think serves as a great recruiting tool for people of color and from minority communities. So.
Yeah, but every interaction that you have out there will make an impact, you know?
Right.
Any other thoughts or ideas? I won't pick folks, but I'm curious as to folks that have not chimed in. Feel free to chime in or throw something in on the text side here.
Sir, this is Major Trang. I'm in Kadena right now.
Okay,
and
good.
Sorry, my video is not on because I'm trying to sort out on my side. But
understand.
One of my thing, a couple things that I'm doing to just encouraging, I think our youth to learn a little bit more about opportunities and then also about the military, because of course if I'm involved, then they know where I'm, you know, where I'm working right now. And my stories have pretty much the military in it. So that's just a way of not just saying join the military, but this is who I am, where I'm at. And so it's part of me. But I volunteer for me involving with youth because I think that's the opportunity for our futures. So I volunteer with Legacy Fly Academy. And that is a nonprofit organization that started by the Air Force pilots. And now they serving majority, actually is focused on minority and aviation. And so 10 to 18, that's the group where we want to share opportunity. And then majority of us are military. So then they know where we are. So then that's kind of easily for us to link them up. And then I also start a nonprofit organization called Fostering Our Youth. And that's open for everybody, regardless of you have to be minority. But of course, they're my friends. So depending on what area I feel like that need a little bit more focus, then I can recruit friends or people that with different background to representing the organization, and then in return, reach out to the community in that area to help with the youth and bring them in.
No,
so that's just my way of just returning and giving back to the community.
No, that's great, and I'm glad that you found the organizations out there, because Q and I are familiar with them and have supported them too with the resources we have. And you know, we learned something interesting that that kids between the ages of about 8 to 12 years old, that's when they kind of have a very good idea about what they want to grow up and become. So if you could set the hook right about that time, you know, you may end up with some folks in the Air Force. So I appreciate that input, Major Tran.
So Sir Hana here, and on the topic of sort of recruiting, or rather retaining, and I think promoting, you know, airmen and specifically officers of color, I think that we've seen that, and we've discussed here, right, that now more so than there was in the past, that it's hard to find, you know, mentors who look like us. So I think our community, and this is a generalization, but we haven't had the mentorship or sponsorship that maybe some other demographics have had. So with that, you know, there are often discriminators that set us apart for promotion and for, you know, moving up the ranks that we don't either get educated on or we're just unsure of. So whether that's like going to weapons school and being a patch or getting into SAS or something, there are these discriminators that and gates that happen that I think we miss. So in your experience, you know, as a graduating wing commander and working at DITRA, just what are some discriminators that you would encourage, you know, the younger officers to pursue that you may not have known about or some of your peers may not have known about?
Now that's a great point, and you know, every career field is different. Every career field has unique discriminators out there, and it's very important to make sure that you understand and have some time with your commander to discuss those paths. And I always also encourage folks to to maintain a network of other folks who are in your career field out there too, to continue to learn from them. And also, you know, just to participate in a lot of the organizations out there, whether it's the Military Logistics Society, you know, all of the various groups out there, because they are all different, and it's really important that you stay knowledgeable and up to speed and current on what's going on. You know, for me, it was clear in a flying squadron, in a bomber squadron, essentially what the I don't want to say the ideal career path is, right? Because we all have to make choices, and each choice I make opens up a door and it shuts down a door. So, you know, it's a challenge there. And I always encourage folks to make sure that they spend time with their squadron commanders and that they get feedback. I've always tried to give feedback, you know, fight for feedback. I give initial feedback, and I give feedback in the middle, and I give feedback at the end. And you have to have a commander and a supervisor that wants to give you that feedback and is comfortable with giving feedback. Because a lot of times I found that people don't want to give the feedback, or the feedback defaults to, you're doing good. If you're doing bad, I'd let you know. But if you take that paradigm, that isn't going to allow you to elevate and grow and do better, right? Because they're essentially not giving you any feedback. They're just saying, yeah, you're doing fine, and I'll let you know when you screw up, versus here's what you're doing, here's what you need to do to kind of move up. And it's tough sometimes too. What is half A1 doing?
With regards to what specifically, sir?
Just on a formal mentorship program, or what are the programs out there that might touch on your question?
Oh, so A1D, where I worked, is so they sort of run the talent, like the coaching and mentorship program in my vector and talent marketplace, and so they're trying to actually ramp it up so that you can, I think, more selectively find mentors. Actually, specifically with regards to like ethnic group and demographic is one of the ways that they're trying to bolster that program. Okay,
and is that something that the officers can sign up for?
So the way it's supposed to work, and I left the office, so I'm not sure what the status of it is, but it's supposed to be where you can, there's like, you know, search fields, and you can look up, you know, by AFSC, gender, and all of that, but they added a search field so you could look up also by like ethnic group if you wanted, you know, an AAPI mentor, for example.
Okay. I didn't know that. All righty. That's great. So I think that the that half has heard, you know, and has received some feedback, and they're doing some things about it. All right. Did
I think, Lilo, are you back?
We did have a question.
Back.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, did you want to go ahead, Hannah?
Yep. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, crisis averted. You know, is it really COVID or a Zoom call if your kids aren't causing some kind of fire somewhere? So, sir, you brought up a couple of things that make me really happy. One was fresh off the boat, because there's another forum in social media called Subtle Asian Traits that I think has some pretty hilarious, we can call them, you know, I would say accurate depictions of Asian families, and it's kind of funny to see what we all think of each other and how many common threads there are. Like, you know, the Filipino Tupperware advertisement is my favorite. Like, if you don't have a country crock Tupperware in your refrigerator, are you even Asian? So fresh off the boat, I think, is a great insight to allow, you know, people to really see who we are as Asian Americans, because I think there's a lot of misperceptions, and then there's a lot of things that I think are pretty accurate, but, you know, we're very underrepresented in the media and social media. So the other thing that you brought up was Det 1. So I just left as the commander of Det 1. So I'm really happy to hear that that is making the rounds at the senior leader levels, and that what that mission is and what they're doing is being communicated because it's highly effective at targeting youth demographics. But what I wanted to ask you about was, when we talk about youth demographics, since that's been my work has been rated diversity over the past year and a half, and how do we get more young women and minorities to join the Air Force?
Mhm.
Obviously, I've taken a particular interest in Asian groups. And when we look at youth demographics, you're really talking about the youth, which you talked about inspiring, but it's also about youth influencers, which I think is where we have a difficult time in the Asian community, because it's not just about inspiring that kid. You have to convince their families, and not just like mom. It's like mom, dad, and grandparents to allow them to join. So when we look at Johnny Kim at NASA, who is like the pinnacle of like Asian icons now because he's an astronaut, what people forget and like don't realize is that he was prior enlisted, which is something that I don't think has the prestige that Asian families are looking for. As a Navy SEAL, then he became a doctor and became an officer, and then he became an astronaut, right? He's just the golden child now. So my question is like, how do we, and we've been trying to like crack the nut, because like, how do we effectively go after the youth influencer population? Because I think that's really where we have to win the hearts and minds. And coming from recruiting, obviously, like I've spent my last year looking at numbers and demographics, 5.6% of the American population. But when it comes to recruitable population, Asians represent 15% of the recruitable population of the U.S. when it comes to officers, because we graduate at higher rates from college. So we have a bigger pool to choose from. Why aren't we getting it? And how do we get after that?
All righty. So I'll answer a question with a question. That's a general officer technique.
Yes, sir.
So why did you join the Air Force, and why did your buddies in college not join the Air Force? And where did they end up going, Lilo?
Yeah, I think that's a valid question, sir. And I think it comes down to that the military has really become family business. You're highly likely to be related to somebody that was in the military if you are in the military now, because our parents' generation, they were likely drafted. And now it is completely volunteer force. And with less than 1% of the population serving, it is, I think, down to about 11 to 14% of the population actually is related to somebody that joined the military.
Yeah.
So the general population just doesn't know. And I wouldn't say that they're uneducated or naive, because I think that have negative connotations, but the general population is unaware of the opportunities that the military provides.
So what are some ideas to educate and inform? I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying. I mean, the stats don't lie. They paint a different picture, but I've volunteered to help out on countless things. I'm co-chairing the DITRA Diversity Council with an SES out there. I'm doing this. I've offered to help AFRS. I've had some requests to go and talk to ROTC dads out there. I'm going back to Pensacola on Friday if the hurricane gets the hell out of my way, and I'll speak at the graduating class out there. But what are some other ways that the senior leaders of the Air Force can help with that?
I think the Geo Inspire piece that they're working right now is going to be pretty effective if they do it correctly, specifically with Asian leaders, because it needs to be targeted to audiences that include parents in them, right? If not, it's because like for me, it's like I went to UC Irvine, which is like 70% Asian. I went there because it wasn't my choice. I was told to go there because that's where my parents told me to go, because that's where everybody who's Asian goes. So it wasn't you know, I think we face different internal barriers, and how do we get around them? And then the other thing I think from a retention point of view is that I often, and I need to write my article for the Chicken Soup for the Soul as well, but I often feel like the Asian population is completely invisible. So every time I sit in on, you know, I sit in on the DAF D&I briefs, and I lead the DAF LOE for aircrew diversity on the task force right now. Well, up until 2 weeks ago when I had my kid. But every time they brief statistics on minority populations, it's African American, Hispanic, and we are very often not included at all, let alone Native Americans, right? We never even talk about Native Americans. But the Asian population isn't talked about. And it's very frustrating for me because there are so few Asian senior leaders that people, like, there's no one there to speak up about it. And so I feel like we don't even matter, because there's the double-edged sword of being the model minority. They're like, oh, we have enough Asians, but I'm like, but we don't, because we should be recruiting. We should have a 15% representation, because that's what the eligible population is. And we're way below that. We're way below like 5%. I think we're about 5%.
Okay, so the last D&I I went to was at the beginning of the year with the chief. I'm trying to remember what the numbers were, but I definitely did not, I don't recall a lot of discussion on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders there too. So, okay, that's a great note. Got it.
And I think I would implore, like, you know, now for everybody on the forum, like now when they brief, like things like status of discipline, even, you know, that is a real big eye opener to look at status of discipline and the racial demographics there. But when we start looking and we start briefing, you know, underrepresented groups, we are more often than not on there. Okay,
got it.
Sir, I'll chime in on that one as well. I mean, the Air Force has never had an AAPI 4-star. The Army has with General Shinseki, and you see that they have a lot more AAPI representation in their GO ranks, and that they retain a lot more AAPIs throughout a full career. And this is some research that I'm just doing academically for my doctorate that I'm going to push over to Det 1. But you know, the question is why? We are disproportionate in our drop off. Like, you look at the cliff, like right at about 16 to 20 years, APIs just like drop off way faster than other minority groups. And that's the question. Why? Part of that, my hypothesis here is that if you don't see many people like you at the top, why would you stick around? If it doesn't feel like you can get there. I heard Senator Duckworth say, that one of the reasons she joined the Army, not only because, her family was Army, but she saw General Shinseki, in the seat and said, I can do that. And if you don't see people in those visible 4-star roles, it's really difficult. So I don't know. I think that has something to do with it, sir.
Snickers, great point there. I think that the Army has another 3-star that will likely make 4-star of Vietnamese descent right now too, and I think that it's different because the Air Force has got the first African American Chief of Staff too, and then right now if you look at the gender side, the only 4-star out there that's female is Jackie Van Ovos at AMC, and none of the branches do too. So I don't know if it's a cyclic thing. I'd be interested in the PhD data that says that we drop off at the 16 to 20 year point. I don't know if that's natural, but that's definitely that's the point that you're really looking at your next career. And oftentimes when I was there, I didn't necessarily look to see what the 1, 2, and 3 stars looked like. You know, it was very much can the family continue to serve and continue to move and continue to do what we're doing? It was a bit more personal. But as I said at the beginning, I'm a little blinded, and y'all are very much helping me to kind of look at this issue with a different lens. So that's very helpful. I can tell you that the Air Force has a couple of 3 stars of Asian descent out there, a couple of 2 stars, and a lot of 1 stars. And it's going in the right direction. And if you looked at, you know, you look at the Air Force today and you look at the Air Force back in 2010, vast improvement. You look at the Air Force in 2000, vast improvement. So there's an upward trend. It's probably not going fast enough, but we don't develop leaders fast, okay? It takes a long time to build a GO. It takes 24 years. You know, it takes the same time to build a good SES. So my question is, what can we do for the folks, and I think that many of you are approaching that point, 16 to 20 years, to encourage you to stay in. Because there's no way that I could make an Asian American GO faster and put them in front of you, right? But what's it gonna take to encourage you all to stay in and continue to rise up? Any thoughts?
Well, sir, there's definitely that perception out there that if you are not on a track by a certain time, then you're never going to get on it. And I know that there was significant push a couple of years ago to really find those on-ramps, you know, for the late bloomers. But I mean, if you're at that, like, you know, I mean, generally you're in your mid to late 30s at that point, and you know, you're a baby to all these Fortune 500 companies, but you're a little long in the tooth in the Air Force. If you're not already on that path, it seems insurmountable to get on it. And truthfully, like, you know, the data backs that up. There's no way you're going to, you know, overcome that difference. But that might be something that, you know, this crop of senior leaders can help address, is how do you get more folks there? Because I mean, just looking at the AFPC data, there's not enough of this generation sticking around to totally flesh out even the 06 ranks in the next, you know, 5-10 years, the way that we have been able to do in the past. So, you know, how do you retain these post 9/11 folks who might have been, you know, like 3-4 deep on the depth chart, and now, you know, all the like shinies that have kind of been invested in are leaving a little earlier than were planned. You know, how do you build that bench and keep it? And that's something that I think is a good nut for the GO core to crack.
Yeah. So who out there knows what the poll year is? Okay. So the way that you build a general officer traditionally is at the 24-year point, called the poll year. That general officer has had to hit a whole bunch of milestones and essentially have a bunch of boxes checked. That was 4 years ago. When General Goldfein became the chief in his first year, he opened up that poll year and created a poll window. So instead of that 24-year mark being a make it or break it mark, he opened it up to 23 to 26 years and said that is going to be the poll window, because it touches on what you said about late bloomers, folks that have had a different career path. So what we're seeing, and it's going to take time for that window to shift downwards to where you are, is that a lot of the milestones I think that you're hinting at, below the zone promotions, some of which are gone now, are going to change. And his goal was to make sure that if somebody came up to that 24-year point and they might have just needed an extra year because they had a baby, or they did something different, that person could still remain on track. And that's going to be what y'all get to go through. You know, it was a good thing for our entire Air Force. I think that it's going to continue, but it's really important that everybody understands that was a significant shift after a couple of decades that General Goldfein made to make sure that we have more choices and we just don't discount people that did not get a box checked at the 24-year point. So you're kind of seeing a lot of the policies, such as that one, the removal of below the zone promotions, that are going to essentially allow us to have a bigger pool of people to pull from.
Sir, one of the other difficulties that I've seen too is that we are collectively as AAPI are not getting promoted at the same rates. We're actually lower rates, and we are not trending upward, even from a younger grade.
Yeah.
So I'll send you those slides.
Okay.
I'll log into my computer this week, but it's all the A1 data, and it's really eye-opening to see because again, it's not the demographic that's discussed, but I think it's the demographic. I think we are a demographic that we are missing opportunities on from a recruiting standpoint.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And if you have the historical trends on that too, I'd be interested to seeing how last year compared to the previous years and the 5-year average, because it'll give me a better idea. And it goes back to what I talked about is, you know, it takes time to build folks up. So I appreciate that, Lilo. Thank you.
And I think, you know, to kind of build on what Lilo said, sir, it's vitally important for us to not forget us, like that demographic for the Air Force. I mean, if you look at what our priorities are and where we see our major threats, they're almost all focused in the Asian and Pacific theater. So having more officers, especially in the senior ranks that come with our background, you know, we're going to be able to maybe address or at least counsel other senior leaders on how to proceed in those environments.
Sir, I have something
That's a
to
great
say.
point, too.
In regards to that, in addition to that, actually, sir, I wanted to say, first of all, I'm Lieutenant Gouda. I'm here at Warner Robins in CISO training, NAV training for the J-Stars.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
That's an important mission.
Yeah, haven't deployed yet, but looking forward to all the things coming up next year. But in addition to those points, 2 points that were just made, I think first generation families, AAPI families, AAPI service members bring in a lot to the table. So we speak languages, we have cultural understanding of different things. Now when it comes to the language aspect, you know, there's DLPTs, there's OPIs that we take and we get paid. And we also do, I'm a LEAP identified airman. So
It's great.
One of the things I was looking at when I was studying or doing research on LEAP is that it is not necessarily, from what I understand, a career enhancer. It's mostly a career, like, how do you call this? It's a very benign thing. It doesn't really accelerate your career or anything like that. It basically is like, it's another thing you do. It hurts you. It doesn't hurt you, nor does it do any good for you. So if there's a provision where you're able to pay for this capability of speaking a different language, why is it not that is an identifier or like an extra strat point on your promotion when it comes to that? Because it is so important. You're already paying for it, which tells me that it's an important thing. Just like how Army had this program called, I'm sure you've heard of it, and some folks on here have heard of it, Military Accessions Vital to National Interest. It was called the MAVNI. It was commissioned back in 2008 or 9, I believe. And that is how I went in. And Army was really good at it. They put me right to work. They deployed me to Afghanistan, and how much ever population, whoever spoke, Hindi, Urdu there, I was able to speak with them in that. Even when I wasn't able to speak their languages, I was able to provide the battalion commander, even as an E3, E2, E4. I was able to give a cultural advice to the commander, and it really helped me out. And I just don't. I see that the Air Force is identifying us. It's giving us these paths to go do something with, but it's not helping us set ourselves aside, and it's not helping us use it to our progression, accelerate our careers at an early time. Yes, when we get to senior, not senior captain, early major time, you're able to apply for a FAO, and then you can do it on and off. At least that's what I understand for now. But just, I guess, overall, what I wanted to say is, if you're able to identify something from an AAPI service member, or anything, it doesn't have to be AAPI, even Arab service members, even though they, I guess, technically fall under AAPI. If they speak language and you pay them for it, it can't just be a side thing. It has to. If I go to a contracting company, if I go to a defense contracting agency, when I decide to pay, I will put together what I can bring to the table, and my pay is based off of that, and my capabilities and promotion is based off of that. Why am I not able to do that as a service member, I guess, is my question, and my point I want to raise.
Mahesh, great point, and I appreciate you speaking up. Must be tough for a young LT to chime in sometimes, but looks like that you got it. Hey, you bring up a couple of issues, and the Air Force has looked at merit-based pay for a long time, and there are some pros and cons to it. I don't want to touch on that so much because I quite frankly, I don't remember them all, but I just kind of remember the whole, hey, if John Edwards is a colonel, or let's say he's a major, and then we got another guy. Are we going to pay John Edwards more because of the patches he wears, because they're qualifiers, than this person that does not, and are we going to pay him more because he's a wing commander as an 06, and we have a whole bunch of 06s that are not wing commanders out there, so those questions are brought up, and I'll have to get back with you on that, because that's very much an A1 realm, and they've looked at that. But what I want to hit on real briefly is just the path. And I think that you nailed something that has been difficult. You are now a rated officer. Your number one job is to fly. We've got illegal constraints that you have to meet flying gate months throughout your career, and it's forced on us by laws. We recognize that while it would be good to send you off to do some career broadening, it's an opportunity cost. And it's an opportunity cost that the Air Force cannot necessarily change with policy. Now, it doesn't mean that we won't do it. And I think that there are a few officers online who have made some changes, but we have to be very careful, and we as the Air Force need a more agile system. But I believe that we also need some relief from some of the laws that we have out there. I'll pause here for Hannah or the experts to chime in on that.
So the only thing I'll say, Mahesh, how do you say your name? I'm sorry, I don't want to. Mahesh, okay, damn it, I should have gone with my first instinct. So you're in LEAP, you speak several languages. Do you have an SCI on your cert?
I don't, SCI, could you?
Special experience identifier. So speaking to what you said, like, are there identifiers? I can't speak to the promotion bit, but the Air Force has it so that you can have like an SCI or a code basically that reflects on your cert if you speak a different language. So if you want, you can like message me offline and I can get with you on like how to make sure that's updated. And then I won't speak too much on it, but the Language Regional Expertise and Culture Office up at A1, they work basically, one of the many things they work on is the language designated positions, or LDPs. And unfortunately, we're at a point, and I can't speak too closely on this because I wasn't this SME by any means, but as an Air Force, you kind of addressed it. Like as an enterprise, we have a problem, I think, capitalizing on a lot of these like cultural and linguistic abilities that our airmen have. And part of that is we have billets that are LDPs, language designated positions, that don't get filled. And so we're trying to like reconcile why that is. And I think part of that is ensuring that our airmen who do have those linguistic capabilities kind of self-identify. And unfortunately, we're at that point where they do have to self-identify. I know that's not necessarily like the greatest solution, but yeah, I can get with you offline if you don't mind shooting me a note as to how you can make sure that you have that SEI in your records.
Oh, absolutely. And I completely understand, sir, that, you know, in the beginning stages for the amount of work, for the amount of, you know, how much ever money Air Force has put into us, you know, they want us to perform. And I think we shouldn't put our feet on two different boats and, you know, basically not succeed at any one of them. But what I'm really alluding to is that, you know, having some kind of guidance where, you know, not everyone is going to stay in the rated field or whatever field they're in. As you progress up, I'm sure they move around. So some kind of liaisonship or some kind of like, if this is the path you want to follow, this is what you have. But if this is something I want to do, hey, this is always there. Instead of, you know, whenever you bring this up, because my flight commander or leadership doesn't know what LEAP really is, they only have one answer. It's like, focus on what you're doing right now. And I'm like, I am focusing on what I'm doing right now. I'm asking this question after the fact.
Right.
Of course, I can't say that. So the best way to have retention amongst this culturally diverse people is that because as much as anyone can fly, right? Anyone can come in, anyone can become a pilot, navigator, whatever it is, rated field, whatever job it is, but only a specific person can go out there and give cultural advice or leadership advice in Pakistan, in India, in China, and, you know, all these places. So, and if we don't stick around until that time, because enough people have told us that doing this would waste your time, doing that would waste your time, we would be encouraged to stay in, focus on the job field we have right now. And then when it's time to go out and explore, we're going to go out and explore as opposed to getting shunned, you know, early in our careers. That's really what I was, you know.
And Mahesh, I know
I have one plug for Mahesh, actually. Super glad to run into you. We're actually in the same flight, and I can talk to you tomorrow, actually. I think your leadership is absolutely right. The big thing, though, is like, as flyers, like as long as you show that like, hey, like your number one priority is indeed flying, right? As long as you can talk to your leadership and like, you know, like I can help you there too, obviously, but like, you know, as long as they understand like what the skill set you bring into the mission are and to the effect that your languages can actually help out the JSTARS mission. Like I've actually seen a lot of people go from JSTARS and go into like language specialized position, like in PACAF, in the AOC and all that kind of stuff. The opportunities definitely exist. I'd say just, you know, stay the course, and the more you get involved with LEAP and the more you use your language for the Air Force, like those doors like definitely open up. So yeah, congrats on LEAP and just stay the course, man.
Thank you, sir. We'll connect. I didn't know you were, we had a fellow JSTARS team member here.
And Mahesh, you know, you and I kind of briefly exchanged messages on chat too, and I'll be happy to talk to you as well offline. Obviously, same career field, same country, same languages. So I can tell you how it's worked out for me thus far, and what's you know, what opportunities are available for folks like us and with our, you know, specific skill set. Absolutely,
sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Perfect, Mahesh. You did not even need me. You got John and Q out there, and I was about to say the same thing, and touch bases with Lilo too, because I think that she was kind of in the same boat too.
Well, sir, we are, I think, well past our initial time that we had set for this. So thank you so much for your time. But I do want to, I think Hannah had one last question that was brought up in the chat. Hannah, do you want?
Yes, sir. So one question was brought up in the chat. I don't know how much time we have to address it, but it was basically asked if the Air Force has done anything or is doing anything with regards to the Uyghur situation in China. We talked about how we can kind of capitalize. Oh, sorry, sir. Oh, wait.
Can you say hi to everybody?
I put away.
Yes. Yes, you may.
And I didn't run the dishwasher yet because I'm
Yes, you may. All right.
Sorry, sir, you need to cut into your family time.
No, our preteen was going down the list of all the chores that she did so that she could watch some TV.
Oh.
So, hey, I think that question is extremely broad and not, a bit outside of my lane when we're talking about the policies like that. I certainly believe it's important. I spend a lot of time looking at what the PRC is doing, and I refer to them as the PRC because you have the Chinese people and then you have the government, right? And I think that it's very different. So that's not one that I could spend a lot of time talking about because I'm also not as current on what's going on out there. I can tell you. Yeah.
And Abdullah, I'm sorry, it's not a punt, but that question is more in the lane for Department of State because it's strictly policy based. So DOD, if there was a policy, we would be in a supporting role of whatever that policy was, but it would be run by Department of State. And FAOs in general, again, we're a big part of that supporting. We obviously work for one of the intelligence agencies. If we're on the attaché route, otherwise we're working at the embassy in security cooperation offices or what have you. So that is certainly an important question and an important topic, but it is more in the Department of State lane for them to carry out the policy of whichever administration is in place at the time.
Great question. And then, and if we had more time in a different space, I know that we can talk about it some more. And I'm glad that you asked that question because it means that y'all are keeping up with what's going on around the world. That's very important. Hey, let me close by just saying thank you. It's been a great time to chat with y'all. It's great to see those young faces out there that kind of look like me with a lot more hair. It's great to see that the younger officers out there, like Mahesh, has got some role models just a few years ahead of him. I really value your input. I just want to make sure that you understand that the leadership of the Department of the Air Force, Secretary Barrett, General Brown, and General Raymond, all three of them get it. I have worked for them directly. I tell you that they're engaged. They understand. They value you and what you bring to our Air Force and the diversity of thought and ideas. It doesn't mean that the Air Force mechanism has got everything worked out and the system is working out properly, but I could tell you that our leadership gets it and that you are important. And, I'll say, hey, I was promoted by a bunch of white guys, right? So that's proof that they see it. And what they see is that they understood that just like everybody else, all of you out there raise your right hand to defend our great country. And that you also, by virtue of that, have said that you would die for our other airmen and soldiers and sailors and Marines out there, no matter what the color of their skin is. And that's important to remember because you are truly the 1% of America that has stepped up to serve our country in times of what is going to be an enduring war. And that's not lost. And you represent a very small piece of that as Asian, American, and Pacific Islanders out there. What you do on a day-to-day basis is going to be what ensures that other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders join our Air Force afterwards. It's going to be the contact that you have and the extra things that you do to make our Air Force better. And with that, I'll say thanks again to Q for facilitating. Thanks to the team for setting everything up. I took several notes here. I'll sit down and go through a few of these things. And I do have a discussion with General Brown tomorrow. And if there's time, I'll bring a few of these things up. All right. But just to let you know, I am honored, absolutely honored to be serving with you. And it's great to see all of you spending your Tuesday night after work on the video to contribute to an important discussion and important effort. So my hat's off to you. All right, I'll hand it over to Q now.
Thank you so much, sir. I don't have anything else to add on top of that. So Hannah, it's up to you if you have any closing remarks.
Thanks,
Just
Hannah.
No, thank you, sir. Once again, honored that you have taken your time, your evening to be with us, just to shed, wisdom and to help us as we sort of pave the path. You and I have talked about how our Air Force, it looks different than it did a few years ago, and having people like you to follow has been awesome. So just thanks, sir. I think I say that on behalf of all of us. And for everyone else attending, thank you for being part of this, because it is a Tuesday night and I'm sure everyone has other stuff to do, but just to be amongst all of these people is super humbling. So thank you everybody for being on this call.
Very, very important.
Hey, one quick ask, because I am not as young as y'all and I can't talk and multitask and read this chat page on the side, but if Q or someone can collect the chat notes and block out the names and just send that to me on a text file, just to make sure that I've got everybody's input.
Okay, sir. And I think we've
Appreciate
got it recorded, so we'll have it saved as well.
Great. Okay. All right. Thank you. Out here. Take care. Be safe.
Take care, sir. Thanks, everyone.